People who have unfriended their childhood best friend. What happened? He was a pathological liar, manipulative, and told all of my most trusted secrets to everyone because he wanted to feel powerful and like he controlled me. Haven't spoken a word in 5 years and I have never looked back. I met my ex-best mate in school. He had a little narcissistic personality, but I understood that and ignored his faults. In late teens, we started drinking and partying as most do. This is when it became apparent that he had alcohol problems, forever being violent, looking for fights, killing my good vibes, and getting me pulled into unwanted situations where I saved him or stopped him from beating on someone for no good reason. Throughout our life, he never attempted to fight me. He remained a pretty good friend to me until our first trip overseas to Asia. During our trip, he tried to coward punch me in the back of the head because I asked him to put out his cigarette that he had just lit. I asked him because we were seated in a restaurant surrounded by families. For some reason that angered him. I got up to leave and luckily heard him coming and avoided his punch. But he then tried to attack me further, which ended with us both on the ground and me on top of him while he shouted and went crazy. Eventually, police arrived and pointed a gun at both of us. Luckily, they didn't shoot. Having foreign police aiming at me because my friend wouldn't calm down was one of the most scary moments in my life, and that's saying something because I don't come from a easy upbringing. He was drunk, of course, and claims he doesn't remember, but there's no excuse to try and coward punch anyone, especially your best mate. I packed my bags that night and left our joint holiday plans in the dirt, traveling solo and having a blast. When I got back from my trip, I quit drinking myself and have remained sober for the last 5 years. Throughout that 5 years, I've had brief encounters with him, but our friendship was never the same. Unfortunately, my old friend never changed as he aged. He eventually went to jail. I work in hospitals and have seen him show up to the emergency triage, bashed with broken bones. And just a few months ago, he randomly knocked at my door where my wife answered. He was covered in blood. My wife went and woke me up. He had a stab wound and refused to go to the hospital. I drove him home and haven't seen or spoken to him since. His brother updated me and said he was fine, whatever that means. I haven't unfriended her yet, but I'm basically at the point where I'm sick of her drama, pettiness and main character syndrome. Anything that doesn't go her way is taken personally, and if you disagree with her or even have a preference that differs from hers, she will berate you into submission and agreement, and heaven forbid you have a life that doesn't consider her wants and desires. We are both 30, almost 31. I'm too old for that She started being nasty to my husband when we got engaged. It was so gross. She was snarky and rude to him every time he spoke and made him feel unwelcome in our own home. I kind of fell out of friend love with her after watching her behave like that. My mom thinks it was jealousy or something. IDK. My husband is the most fun and caring person I've ever known. I expected her to be happy for me. In retrospect, I realized there were a lot of other red flag issues I had been ignorant of. It's been 3 years now, and I'm so much mentally healthier without the drama she was churning up. My high school friend's boyfriend, now husband, gave me and our other friends seriously bad vibes, and we didn't like him. He convinced her that we were jealous and toxic, and eventually talked her into cutting us all out of her life. I remember her telling us that we needed to grow up and stop thinking of boys as yucky. After graduation, he spent some time in jail for molesting his 8-year-old female cousin. She married him anyways and now they have 3 children together. Was thick as thieves with my best friend through elementary school, but during the summer transitioning to junior high he started getting in with the cool kids, while I stayed as a nerdy kid. By the time school started in the fall we were placed in different classes and just didn't hang out anymore. No hard feelings or anything, we just drifted apart quickly. Dude tried to kill me 2 days before Christmas. Turned out he had a crush on his own sister and was upset she had a crush on me. He failed to kill me, but he definitely killed our friendship. I told him I was gay, and he said we couldn't be friends anymore. 7th grade me was shattered. Best friend since 3rd grade till college. The effer borrowed a bunch of money then slowly avoid me over time. I asked for my money back for 4 or 5 times over a 3 years period, got tired and a bit mad, so I gave him a piece of my mind and have never spoken to him since. Never got my money back. 8 years later, got an email from him. Said, hey, remember me? Block and delete without even thinking about it. And to be honest, I don't even care about the money. A couple thousands may be a lot back when I'm in college. But back then, I would give him all my savings. If he's in need, all he has to do is ask. I'm just disappointed he treated me like that. I had a best friend I met in 8th grade. Never so much as had a fight. Fast forward to us being 22 and in college. She marries a mutual guy friend from our college. I was her maid of honor. Everything was great. A few months after the wedding, me and her plan a week-long trip to New York for my birthday. This is my first big trip away from my state, and we both spent loads of money to make it perfect. Beautiful hotel in the heart of Times Square, high-end clubs, fancy dinners, reservations, etc. The first day we get there, unpack and head out for some shopping and drinks. At the bar, she is constantly flirting with anyone who will look her way. NBD. We continue the night at our first club of the night. Some drive, and his friend approach us. They order shots with us a few times, saying it's on them. An hour or so goes by, and my friend is now grinding on these men, kissing one of them, and inviting them both back to our hotel room. Remember, she's married to one of my good friends. I had a boyfriend. This was never intended as part of our trip. It was a birthday/girls trip. I take her aside and ask if this is really something that she wants to do. Being freshly married, she gets incredibly offended and runs out of the doors of the club and across a busy New York street at 2 a.m. Disappears. I'm stuck with the bill. Those guys' shots were also on it. I pay it just to get out of there. I got stuck outside the club by two creepy men, probably not much older than me. They tried to get me to go with them in their car. I kept refusing, but they wouldn't stop. I finally get an Uber and find my way back to the hotel. I open the door, and my friend is giving me the cold shoulder. I immediately say, you know, we have to talk about this to move on from it. And she loses it on me, saying I have no right to say what she can do with her life, etc. I try to explain to her that I'm not judging, but both her and her husband are great friends of mine, and I wouldn't feel I was being a good friend to her if I didn't say something to her about it privately. The conversation turned heated. All the alcohol involved wasn't helping. She says, "Are you saying I'm a whore?" And I say, "No, but basically," and she slapped me across the face as hard as she could and ran out of the room. I stood there with no movement in shock. I call my mom for advice. 10 minutes later, security comes to the hotel room. They tell me that my name isn't on the hotel room, so my friend has the right to kick me out. I'm sorry, what? He tells me he will watch me pack and I have to leave immediately. I said, "You saw us check in together. This is our room. What are you talking about?" And my friend is staring at the floor and won't look at me. I'm forced to pack my bags. They wouldn't let me stay in the hotel lobby either, as I'm not a paying guest. I gave her my half of the money and she booked it in her name. Now it's 3 a.m. I'm outside of a hotel in February on my actual birthday. It's snowing, freezing. I have nowhere to go and I just bust out in tears. I called the airline to go home. My original $90 round trip was now changed to a $600 flight home in 2 hours. To make matters worse, I'm a type 1 diabetic, and given the sudden situation, I had no emergency supplies with me. The whole situation was terrifying. I blocked her on everything in the Uber on the way to the airport. Haven't talked to her since. I heard from mutual friends she filed a police report in New York against me for hitting her. That hurt the most, because it was so shocking to get slapped by her, and I never even retaliated. So she lied and smeared my name even after all of it. I spent thousands of dollars booking this trip and wasn't even in New York for 24 hours. My best friend's young son was killed in a four-wheeler accident. I was the first responding paramedic. I had to take him from my friend's arms to work on him, knowing he was dead all along. We flexed the child on Lifeline, then I drove my best friend and his wife to the hospital. Oh, knew all along he was dead, but they didn't. It wasn't his fault or mine that he died in any way, but I could never look my best friend in the eye again. All I could see was his pain. So we drifted apart. I finally got to tell him and his wife before my friend died with heart trouble. It was a one-sided friendship. I was making all the efforts and was receiving nothing in return. The only time I felt like I was wanted in the room was after a paycheck, since I was the only teenager working. When I moved to states away, nobody came to see me off or even message me a farewell or anything. When my sister and then my dad passed away, not even a message of condolence. It was gut-wrenching, and I still sort of resent them for it, even though I should just get over it and move on. It's definitely made it more difficult and somewhat awkward to make new friends. The guy was always pretty violent. He got a job as a prison guard. One day, maybe a month or two after he started, he told me about how he watched two guards torture an inmate with pepper spray. I told him that I wasn't gonna wait around until he became like them. I'd seen the guy be violent and cruel too many times to trust him in a position like that. She tried to give me the people die every day speech 3 days after my cousin died. Before we met up, I had just picked up my cousin's graduation pictures and had the grad gown one framed for the funeral later that week. I put everything in me aside to be there for my uncle, aunt, and cousins. Honestly, after I heard people die every day, I just saw red and said I don't want to be your friend anymore, and the rest is a blur, because I absolutely stopped caring about her existence at that point and left. I have not trusted anyone with the title of best friend since then. It's been almost 10 years. We were best friends through infant and junior then. When we moved to senior, we were placed in different tutor groups, met new people and just stopped talking. Since then we say hi when we see each other and live literally round the corner from each other. But sometimes I wish we had remained best friends, because she really was the only person in the whole world I could have trusted back then with my life. I'm still close to one of her sisters and her mum. She was a narcissist. I sometimes feel like it was my fault. She had a pretty terrible home life. Mom was severely disabled due to mental illness. Dad was an alcoholic. Too many children. And as someone who loved her dearly, I tried to make up for it. I always asked her how she was doing. I always invited her places to get her out of the house. I always focused on making things better for her. After we became teenagers, I started noticing that everything was about her. She never asked anyone else how they were doing. If you had the nerve to say something like, "I'm really down today," she would immediately remind you that she had clinical depression. No one else was allowed to have it as bad as her. She expected to be invited to everything, and she would be straight up nasty if she wasn't. I also think she had a habit of making up illnesses/injuries for attention. Her big one was her wrists. After high school, I tried to set her up with a friend. Went on a double date to a movie. During the movie, it looked like they were cuddled up together, and I thought, wow, home run. But after the movie, the friend suddenly had a change of plans and had to leave. I found out after the fact that she BA'd him through the entire movie. I'm cold. It's cold. My arm hurts. The seat is uncomfortable. My wrists hurt. My knees hurt. It's too loud. I'm freezing in here. He said he almost left in the middle of the movie. Didn't want to embarrass us, so he put up with it. But that he had to line it out of there afterwards because he couldn't stand her. I was mortified. The straw that broke the camel's back, however, was her response to me getting married. Trying to keep this as brief as possible. For almost a year leading up to the wedding, she had been ghosting me. We always went to lunch together after class, but she started sending someone to tell me she was going home instead. Wouldn't even tell me herself. Messaging her got very little response beyond her complaining about whatever new terrible thing was going on in her life. By the time the wedding came around, I honestly didn't feel like we were close anymore. Our wedding was small. We had very little money, so only family was invited, and then I had 2 bridesmaids and my husband had 3 groomsmen. She was not among them, for reasons that I still feel are justified. The last message I even had from her was 6 months before the wedding. It was 3 months after the wedding I ran into her at a bookstore. She immediately launched into talking about herself, her life, again what new terrible tragedies she was dealing with. Not a single word about my new marriage. No congratulations. Nothing. Finally, after about 10 minutes, I said, "You know I got married in July, right?" And she snapped back, "And that I wasn't invited to the wedding." Yes, I know. She never did congratulate me. That was it. It sounds petty, but it was just one thing in a stream of offenses. I realized at that moment that she didn't actually care about me as a friend. She cared about the status of being a friend. She could have said anything else. She could have congratulated me and then expressed that she was hurt by not being invited, and I would have apologized. But no, somehow, even my wedding was about her. To add insult to injury, my mom made her first daughter a baby quilt. She never sent a thank you card, never took pictures of the baby in it, nothing. To our knowledge, it was never even used. Then, years later, she was at our high school reunion. I skipped it because my dad had just been diagnosed with terminal colon cancer 2 days before, and there she is, 8 years after the above mentioned wedding, and she is talking shit about me to our former classmates about not inviting her, behind my back, at our high school reunion, when everyone knew I was sitting in the hospital with my dad on a ventilator unsure if he would live through the night.